Welcome, welcome. Okay, and to Friends of the African Union. Welcome to the Friends of the African Union, and we are in a hangout. All right, all right. We're just gonna get it up and going here. Okay. Daniel, I'm at the office. Yeah. All right. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, well, you hit some while I was over there. Okay. Right. It's a separate FAU office.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Well, rectangle.
Yeah. So,
So this is the FAU office.
this is the FAU office. That's the Hargrove Engineering Office, and that's the Hargrove Enterprise.
Okay.
Yes, Kim. Yes, I do. Okay. I was just trying. Oh, wow. It is that time, isn't it? Okay. Yeah. Huh. Yes, I do, and I'll call you right back with it. All right. Yeah, I was actually one of the things that I was doing is let's see, screen share. Okay. I got to bring down another monitor, obviously. Uh, Screen share. Okay, thank you. Invite people. Here we go. Okay. I'm the only one on this. Okay. Yeah, so what this did, somehow this got into my camera and set my settings. Okay. I can't broadcast. We're actually set up, okay, to broadcast. Okay, I have been playing around. Okay, turn the camera on. Okay, that should turn the camera on. Turn the camera off. Okay. Well, we're on the air. We're no picture. Okay. We're live. We are friends of the African Union. We're recording this, and people are just going to see that picture with my head. Okay, with the National Association of Black Veterans, the one we took, me, you, and Fred. Okay. I cut that out. Okay. I gotta see what my number is. Okay. Meeting went great. The Silly Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they are willing to host us as Media Bridges too. All right. So if I can't get to school, they're willing to host us. I think we got to school. I'm talking about, yeah, where we are right now on Pine Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. We just gotta ask for it. I'm planning on doing this week.
It's gonna be following you don't know yet.
You know, is where we call the volunteers of everybody. Okay, we're see, I got me, you, and this tech guy, and Steve, if he wants in on the meeting, we'll sit down and talk. But I need to know what the technology is. Okay, because the technology that they bought sucks. Okay, all right, because they bought customized shit. All right, and when they bought that, they were up to no good. Okay, you don't buy customized stuff. Customized stuff means that you got private sector money, or you're doing something that okay. And see, and my odd against guy who's running it now is I asked him for that information. He didn't want to give it up. No, exactly. Okay, it shouldn't be a secret. There's no reason for it to be a secret. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I didn't give him that number. That was the supercomputer stuff. Oh. Yeah. Why? Somebody else wants that 100,000?
Yeah. But not so much somebody else, but the person who took the school.
Huh?
The person who was assigned to the task that used to make that used to have wants to do something else with the money. So I'm trying to get a meeting with him. He just wasn't in the office, so I got to wait some money.
Who you talking about, Steve?
Not Steve.
Oh, has Cranley appointed a new? Okay, who's the new one?
Guy's name is Rocky from Hudson.
Yeah. And what does he want to do?
I'm not 100% sure, but it involves spending off some of that money.
Yeah. Okay. And okay.
And the reality is not enough money to spend off to still keep up the book.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we need to hurry. Is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I know that we had a meeting with him last week.
Majority owned channels of information. But everything I say, everything that I'm reading is publicly available through normal channels. You can get access to it through the internet. So with that, let's begin this day, July 19th, 2014. I look at today and the week before, the week just the week behind. Beginning with the United States. And this past week, of course, we had the tragedy in Ukraine, and the President of the United States obviously had to spend a brief bit of time. The President accused, Obama accused Russia of aiding the rebels, providing them with advanced heavy weapons, giving them training, and that is what the ideas of the President facilitated the tragedy. The tragedy was Malaysian Airlines flight number 17 leaving out of Amsterdam, the Netherlands, headed towards Malaysia and to Australia. I'll have more to say about that flight. At this point in time, the United States is saying that it has evidence that the missiles were launched from the eastern Ukraine territory in the hands of the rebel separatists, and that it was launched from a SAM site, a surface to air missile mobile platform. The plane was ordered to fly at 32,000 feet, which it was doing, and was attacked by a surface to air missile, exploded. Over 298 persons, both passengers and crew, all were lost.
Yeah, it's on
The
you.
plane disintegrated, and bodies and property rained down over a 67-mile area. The question is not whether the area is being protected or looted, or whether the area is being sanitized. There's calls from the world community regarding an international investigation. All fingers are pointing back and forth. So that's the big situation in terms of the world. Second only to the invasion of Gaza.
Okay, so I've got
President
a new
called for all parties to exercise restraint as possible.
getting this stuff
And
down. I haven't been able to depend on anybody else. So.
The call for ceasefire, and so that situation is raging as well. In addition to conflict and war type situations,
LaShawn, yeah.
the president was also involved earlier with trying to actually push forward his request to Congress for supplemental funding of $3.7 billion to deal with the refugee problem that is on the American shores. The United States is not used to having refugee issues. We usually are responding or encouraging others to from around the world.
What if, how do you think your humanitarian people would feel if I took 30,000 or it's about 20,000 of those kids and put them into a new town?
Deadly situation and traveling hundreds, if not 1,000 miles, and strangers.
You know, those kids who are coming across, those illegals who are coming across our border.
And under the United Nations Charter, these refugees should be afforded.
We got empty towns,
Humanitarian
okay, in Nevada.
That is not going to
I
sit
can
well
take
with
20,000 of them,
Yeah,
okay,
United
and
States.
put them in a town.
Secondly,
Put the illegals in one town, okay? I mean, it would take them off the issue, okay?
Scare them to death because you
Why?
genocide.
No, what? Go home. Go home. You're here illegally. If we went in your country like this, you'd be locked up.
The United Nations report has announced that again, under the UN Charter, the Human Declaration of Human Rights, water is a human right. Without it, you cannot exist.
The President of the United States would be a contract and be an unsolicited solution
And
to
so
the problem.
therefore they have responded to that situation as well as the United Nations.
I think he would take it as,
The report is that
why wouldn't he take it?
all
Right now, he's getting beat up because they're showing, the Republicans are beating him up, they're showing pictures of these kids in jails and et cetera. Not ready for it. Okay, we're not ready for this. Okay, he's getting beat up on that. Now we have a group come out and say, humanitarian, we will take these kids, put them in a town, give them connectivity back to their parents via the digital internet. We'll put them in school. We'll have them under control. Okay, they will have guardians, they'll be safe.
Now you're explaining a lot more. This sounds like consultation.
Yeah, okay, but yeah,
Robert Harris.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm ready to buy Robert Harris, okay? Okay, because Robert Harris gave me the exact same look that
Compensate. Yeah, but any other name was compensation.
yeah, but, hey, look, they hear illegal. All right, I have no sympathy. We need to take care of our own kids. Okay.
That is a crazy problem.
Well, I mean, it's part of his own problem. I agree with Republicans on this. I agree with this. It's his own problem. The DREAM Act. It's a violation. It's bad when I started agreeing with Republicans, but, he overreached. He overreached. He does not have green act is an illegal act.
Canada and Mexico
Okay.
border U.S. Children who are
It is.
essentially trafficked kids, even if they came here by
I mean, it's like a floodgates went open, man.
Uh-huh.
would be afforded with
But our kids, all this money, you know, billions of dollars to take care of foreign kids, and that $2.5 billion, what will it do for our kids?
And so the president has suggested that he might seek a waiver. However, the Democrats in the House and the Senate, as well as specifically Hispanic caucus, are urging him in the strongest terms not to do that.
Yeah,
They
well, I
rise like
think
children,
about what
and America has a long-standing commitment to treat children as innocent.
I'll do it at the end of the conversation. But, okay, look, FAU reached out, you know, right now, today, we're reaching out with Native Americans right now. Okay, in Washington, we're having the Congress of Black American Indians that became official today. Okay,
Attorney General Holder
and
and the Department of
I'm bringing
Justice
the Congress and FAU in. We were the first black group that said we'll bring everybody next Memorial Day to issue an apology for our participation in First People's Genocide. We did that on Memorial Day already.
What they have acknowledged is that if there was
Yeah, I didn't know we would be the first, okay, but
addressing
right. It did me.
So I mean, you know, about that, I mean, you know, I was surprised in the sense of, oh, nobody, you know, that if they didn't apologize for slavery.
No, that's the government. That's the government, okay? I mean, you know, I'm talking about us black groups. Yeah, our black groups.
I understand, and I looked at the great thing. Because of reality is, it happened.
Yeah. We were good. But see, the great thing that using that in terms of us is for FAU is saying 150 years ago today, 200,000 Africans were wearing the Union blue. The U.S. was on their belt buckle, and a rifle was in their hand. Okay. They were killing
whatever the proper sentence should have been, all things being equal. And in many instances,
and so within that context, what are you doing?
When you start to serve the time in your sentence,
They were fighting for freedom.
I'll actually
They
already
were
serve
fighting
the amount of time
not be slaves. What are you doing?
So that's 50,000.
And if we use that as a kicker for our recruitment for FAU.
The Pakistani activist, Malaya Yousafzai,
And we
went
tried
to
to
Nigeria to stand with the girls who had been kidnapped by Boko Haram and who had escaped. She met with them, talked with them, and held a press conference in which she said she would fight to see that all the girls were released. She met with President Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan, and encouraged him to meet with the parents of these girls, which he has not yet done. And she raised her hands up with their hands at the press conference to show solidarity. Layla is a young woman who was an activist while she was 16, or a young lady in high school, supporting girls getting an education. Taliban ordered her school bus, shot her in the hip, and left her for dead. She instead got medical treatment outside of Pakistan and survived. She is now a worldwide celebrity for female rights and for young women getting a quality education. And so she visits Nigeria around the world. Secretary of State John Kerry has negotiated an extension of the nuclear talks between the United States, between European, United States, Russia, etc., and Iran. These talks will expire on tomorrow. What that means is that in exchange for this extension, Iran agreed with all of
Yeah, but you see, when they put it in the women's thing, If they don't get the men involved,
and therefore would not be available.
good luck.
Okay,
In Islamic countries.
it won't work, but that's also.
I understand that, interject.
No, but I mean, but seriously, you're right. I mean, you're right there too. The
Economically joining, still Russia and India.
I'll tell you, I am so confused about some of this stuff because it's not logical.
We're talking religion.
I know.
Okay, so you trying to advise?
I'm talking about the type of logic.
It's very, we're believing in something that we can't prove empirically to the next person. That's not logic.
No, but I mean, but there is a logic even within the religious community that we should be. Not the same logic as we do. There's always different definitions of that. Right now, I mean, there are very few religions that practice that call for and teach murder on a mass scale.
Excuse me?
Yeah,
Islam. Christianity practiced it. Islam.
I don't think it's in practice.
Call for, okay, both of our religions says what about proselytizing? Okay, and both of our religions, okay, yeah, but Islam takes it to the next step and says if you don't accept Islam, kill them. If they do not accept Islam as either convert or pay homage to Islam, then what does it say do to the unbeliever?
Not quite. I hear what you're saying, but not quite. In other words, there's the passage in if the person does you wrong, forgive them. If they do you wrong again, then you slay the infidel. I understand. But I'm saying that as I look through these different segments,
is Islam incompatible with Western civilization? Is the question.
If it moves the way it's moving, yes, it's still not here.
So what the reason Islam has to come in the 21st century is they're going through in the 20th century, in the 21st century, what we went through centuries ago.
Oh, I said it wasn't. It was farther back than the 20th century.
Oh no, we're talking the 13th, 14th century. That was the great fight between Islam and Christianity, where Christianity got Islam out of Europe. I remember that's when the hard-on became between Europe and Islam.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, when you go back to 1492, that period of time, when the boys were indeed driven out of Spain, it's always driven out.
But in Turkey, in Constantinople, and Australia, they were still in Middle Europe. Okay, they continued in Middle Europe up until today. Bosnia and Herzegovina. Okay.
That happened because at one point, Islam, scientifically and in other ways, was ahead of the Western world.
Yeah, well, that's why we were come out of the.
And then they like to stop. But okay, we're going to stop it right here. We're going to close. We're going to stop the world at this point, and we're really going to go even further than that.
Yeah, 14th century. Okay, all right.
But the world alone.
But the rise of the Ottoman Empire. That was the rise of the Ottoman Empire.
That's part of the problem. But in one sense, Islam was conquered by
the Caliph.
Well, you mean the capitalism? In other words, Islam was taken over by an empire.
Yeah.
Because Christianity was taken over by an empire.
In additional Chinese news,
You're talking about the
China
Roman
has
Empire. Okay.
No, I'm talking
Christianity.
about Constantine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
300 AD,
He took it over.
Right, and he never became a Christian.
He claimed he did.
Okay.
You can find it.
Constantine never claimed to be a Christian. He died a pagan.
Well, you can, yeah, because the last I read research is that Constantine, before he died, and he did it on purpose, before he died, he took it. And even though while he was alive, he drank a lot of turkey. But he did that on purpose because he felt that to be emperor, he had to do some stuff that was definitely not Christian. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He did receive baptism. Shortly before his death.
Yeah, he did it on purpose, something like that. He purposely was, he did all of his sinning, and then he repented before he died, hoping that he would be saved.
A 43-year-old father of 6 African-American male, his grandfather, who weighed over 400 pounds, was standing outside of a store on Staten Island when a group of police officers approached him and accused him of selling cigarettes. That then pursued them, moving in several of them to try to overpower him and aggressively arrested him. One of them put him in a chokehold, and the father of 6 is now deceased. Of course, there have been many incidences of excessive force used by the New York Police Department, and this is one more. This particular incident was caught on tape, and has therefore been the subject of a great outcry. The mayor of New York says there's going to be a full-heading investigation of this incident. Individuals, the gentleman, David Garner, one of the reasons he suffered so is because as an individual, addicted to weighing 400 pounds and being a large man, he suffered from diabetes, suffered from sleep apnea, and more importantly, he suffered from chronic asthma. And so the officers were reckless and showed total disregard to any health concerns by putting him in that shelter. Actor Mark Ruffalo, don't know who he is. He is the actor who played the Hulk in the most recent Avengers movie. He joined a rally outside in Detroit to protest the shut-off of the water for those residents of citizens. I normally don't get into celebrity news, that kind of thing, but in this case, this Kim Kardashian has a video game. That video game is now on track to pull in over $200 million. And the only point I would make is how many African American female celebrities and singers should have had a video game long before Kim Kardashian. Moving on, the House has voted to allow banking access to legal marijuana permits. If you combine this story with Attorney General Holder's attempt to rectify injustices associated with the war on drugs, you understand and see my point. You have, on the one hand, non-African Americans or non-Latino Americans benefiting from big business now moving into the lawful sale of marijuana, but you still have in D.C., New York, and other places, government and business leaders who want to continue arresting young African American and Latino persons for the marijuana that out in Colorado and in the West, Washington State, is now legal. Apple's computer company has announced that a new person, Wagner, is going to replace one of its founding board members, Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell was confident of Steve Jobs. Stu Wagner was the founder of BlackRock, which is an investment firm. New York City, first black female firefighter named Danae Mayans is now featured in the annual calendar of best and hottest firefighters of the Fire Department of New York, which is another first. She's an 11-year veteran, and it's the first African-American woman who was hired by the New York Fire Department. Of course, in as much as she's an 11-year veteran, you can do the math to figure out how many years before African-American women were allowed to join that department. As it is, with hundreds, if not thousands of firefighters, there's still less than 100 females on the force. There's an article out on one of the many websites. I'm not sure if it's real or the but it asks the question, is the Nation of Islam time again in hip hop? That article talks about the fact that during the 80s and 90s, everyone from Dr. Dre to all the way up to Tupac, everyone was influenced by the teachings and philosophies of Malcolm X and of the Nation of Islam and of a particular group called the 5%. Perhaps after I finish, there are persons on the line who may wish to expound on the impact of the philosophies of self-sufficiency as well as self-identity and how that has impacted what we call positively conscious, politically conscious hip-hop, and whether or not it is time to have a restoration of righteous, indignant hip-hop as opposed to the other stuff that you see. Likewise, in LA, speaking of police department, the family of the grandmother who was savagely beaten in Colorado State has now filed a lawsuit against the state of California and the California Highway Patrol. Marvel Comics announced this past week that in the comic book, they're going to now replace the former Captain America with an African-American Captain America. And of course, there will be a storyline he will be introduced. There is precedent with in DC Comics. You had a white Green Lantern who was an Air Force or military person and who was recruited by that corps. And then in later editions, that Green Lantern was replaced by a black Green Lantern who was also a former military man, Marine, that was part of the bio in which he was presented. And so now Marvel Comics is picking this up. No doubt this will be a Army personnel person of African American ancestry. His storyline will somehow lead him to becoming the new Captain America. LeBron James, of course, is going back to Cleveland, but now there's stories out that talk about his potential impact, possibility of a resurgence in terms of Cleveland downtown, in terms of the resurgence in terms of Cleveland, African American community, business community, etc. So there's a great deal of anticipation over the fact that you now have someone who, if not a billionaire, is, because of his contract, going to be very close. They severely mega millionaire. So beyond the fact that he's an athlete and a world-class athlete who plays basketball, the fact is that in the person of LeBron James, just like in the person of Michael Jordan and many other stars, you have a businessman who is worth an extremely large amount of money, who is now going to be available to have impact in the city of Cleveland. The ex-mayor of New Orleans, the person who was in that seat during Hurricane Katrina, Mayor Ray Nagin, was convicted. He was convicted of embezzlement, also what we would call pay for play. However, his attorneys have given notice they intend to appeal his conviction. This past week, or actually from July 19th to the 22nd, National Council of the Raza is meeting in Los Angeles. The African American community really sometimes suffers because we are not as assertive in our identification. We, of course, have a civil rights organization. It is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We do not have a component of a national political organization like the like LULAC, which the Latino American United Conference. The RAZA stands for the race. The Latinos and Hispanics are actually creating an identity from the several ethnicities all throughout Latin America that they come from. But in the U.S., they are uniting around the concept that they are a race, an identity, and ethnicity. That is what the RAZA means. And so the National Council of the RAZA is meeting and holding their national conference. Jeremiah Peters, who is a white Anglo-American from Virginia, wanted to give his daughter a present. So he flew to Egypt, went out to the desert, and claimed some unattended land. He then came back and broadcast that he had bought, purchased, and claimed that land, title to that land, and had declared that that land is now a kingdom, so that his daughter can become an Egyptian princess. She's 7 years old, named Emily. Needless to say, there are a lot of people who are taking offense at the umbrage of the man, wondering how this happens, that you can just go back to land and they claim that land as a kingdom. Some said it's a joke, but given the history of Africa, this is not a joke that one should take lightly unless the joke is going to be on us. A celebrated Olympian, Alice Coach, African-American woman, was the first, Alice Coach Davis, was the first woman to win an Olympic gold medal. Passed away at 90 years of age in Albany, Georgia, my hometown. Miss Davis won the gold medal in 1948 Olympics for the high jump. Barbara and remember her. In Florida, the FBI has identified two Supreme police officers of the local police department who are also members of the case. Needless to say, they are currently suspended and investigations are continuing into their affairs. A minister, Charles Barone, a white minister from Texas, did a protest action by self-immolation, giving groceries, I think is the term. Basically, he set fire. And the note that he left, this reverend said that he put this action in protest of the treatment that African Americans have received in their sojourn here in the United States. He lived in Grand Saline, Texas. He was a minister of the United Methodist Church. He received his degree from Harvard Divinity School. And he said in his note that when he was a child, he witnessed many, many cruel inhuman acts that were put upon African American people. Acts of cruelty, barbarity, murder, lynching, etc. So these were public acts, and persons who do these acts with impunity, knowing that they would never be prosecuted. And so, in an effort of protest, he set fire to himself. That's the note. He said, "This is to draw attention to the injustices that blacks have received in America and to demand justice for all the years of suffering, cruelty, barbarity, and burden for heaven." And I want to make sure that I get his name. His name is Charles Barone. This past week, the 18th, Nelson Mandela's birthday. Needless to say, it was observed around the world. The United Nations declared July 18th International Nelson Mandela Day. In South Africa, the government asked that all South Africans commit themselves to 67 minutes in the day, at least, a humanitarian good deed in honor of 67 years that Nelson Mandela spent both in jail and prison, as well as in public service as president and as ex-president of South Africa. I think it's good right now. Let me do a station identification. I was going to wait after the written section for this kind of law. If you just came on the call, my name is T.C. Adams, Vice Chairman of the Friends of the African Union. This is our African World News Report. This is July 19, 2014. Is there anyone who's currently on the line who came in after we started? Please identify yourself. Belimo Ed Brown. Good evening, Brother Brown. Hey, how are you? Doing well, thank you. Anyone else? If not, then we shall continue. We will turn our attention now to the Caribbean. The United States State Department sent a letter to both the U.S. Virgin Islands delegate, Donna M. Christensen, as well as to the governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, informing them that emergency passports will not be available on the Virgin Islands, and that person will have to go to a new office on the island of Puerto Rico. The delegate, Mr. Christensen, is complained about that and said that that is an inconvenience for any person who not only have to pay extra money if you want an emergency passport, that means expedited passport services. But in addition, you got to now travel from one island to another. And why would the Virgin Islands not have their own passport office to be able to pursue that? This is something we need to keep our eyes on. Because the question always will be, if you have 5 million, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million persons on the island of Puerto Rico, and there's a possibility that that island may become a state, opposed to a territory, and that island would get 2 senators and almost 10, 8 to 10 congressional delegates based on population. U.S. Virgin Islands is much smaller. So U.S. Virgin Islands is also one of the places where you have taxation without representation. The delegate can be in Congress, but she does not have the power of being a voting member of Congress, just like Eleanor Holmes Norton does not have a voting power, even though she's a delegate for the District of Columbia. In order to gain adequate representation for persons of African descent, we need to constantly think about the business on how services are perceived and delivered both in the District of Columbia and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and think about how we position both of those groups of people that they can have their full representational rights by gaining safer. We need to discuss and give that thought. The CARICOM League of Nations Office team have announced that they and Japan will hold a first-time summit will occur in Trinidad in the near future. Several U.S. carriers, some U.S. carriers are now offering new services through Integra. American will fly you there out of Florida, and Delta Airlines will fly you out of Atlanta. Barbadians are seeking funding for a rehabilitation project we announced a couple of weeks ago. I think we covered this, the article which coastal reefs are coming under climate change threat as well as predatory threat. So there's a need to try to save and salvage those natural treasures. In Jamaica, they have confirmed the first case of the chicken virus there. Haiti is seeing a drop-off in cholera cases, but as we reported almost a month ago, the chicken virus cases both in Haiti and the Dominican Republic are exploding. Russian President Vladimir Putin is denying suggestions that Russia is going to try to open its former radio signal base, spy base in Cuba to intercept American communications. Grenadians are set to vote on a constitution or the new constitutional changes in February of 2015. Some of those changes will involve title of their national fleet chief, the National Commissioner of Fleet. These items are being pursued according to the Prime Minister because a sovereign nation should have constitutional identity and procedures that are consistent with its sovereignty. In Mexico, they have found the oldest skeleton of any surviving person or human being. The skeleton was found almost intact and was seen in an underwater cave in Mexico. The skeleton is believed to be 13,000 years old and would represent a human being who survived and lived towards the end of the last ice age. And as I said, it is believed to be the oldest skeleton of a human being indigenous to the Americas. The United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was visiting the Dominican Republic and highlighted and applauded the efforts that they had made along with the country of Haiti, work together to resolve the issues and differences and to start building and forging collaborative efforts together. The company in the U.S. of Federal Express has been indicted for assisting in delivering of illegal drugs to private customers from illegal pharmacies. Some of these pharmacies that are illegal are supposed to be existing in the Caribbean, so therefore that's why Caribbean articles were covering this particular story. Phoenix Airways, a new operation out of St. Kitts, has announced that it is open business, will have flights leaving and coming to St. Kitts. In addition, St. Kitts Devon have announced that they are going to switch again, as many British Caribbean islands and countries are now switching from the Caribbean Council as an overseas territory as an overseas territory. Their highest court, their Supreme Court, is the Caribbean Council of the United Kingdom. They are now switching to the Caribbean Court of Justice as part of the overall plan for integration, and that has run into a snag because they are in conjunction with other countries that are also switching over, but it is still expected to occur. Continuing in Caribbean news, the Caribbean Clean Development Mechanism, CDM, its board chair, Hugh Seeley, warned Caribbean nations about sea level rise. If things change immediately and CO2 was removed from the atmosphere, sea level based on the current amount of CO2 and warming would rise by at least 1 meter, affecting many coastlines and the loss of many trees. But at this point, the rise of sea level is 3 millimeters per year. In another decade or two, at the current rate of not dealing with climate change, that is expected to double, and then a decade or two after that, double again. At that point, as Mr. Healy is saying to the state, you will see stronger hurricanes. Agricultural activity will be affected and probably decline. Temperatures throughout the Caribbean being close to the equator will rise. We'll see soil erosion, peak erosion. With that, we will have a decrease in some of the most popular tourist sites. There will be a loss of seaports, airports, and things will continue. This is, of course, is a prediction based on the world not responding to the climate change issue. Pope Francis has demanded justice for an attack that occurred 20 years ago in Argentina. He was there. It was an attack on a Jewish center, the Esmina Jewish Center, and Lisa Jewish Center. That attack resulted in killing 85 people. So the Pope is saying that should still be investigated, and those responsible should still be prosecuted. In Caracol, they unfortunately had a drive-by shooting at their airport, and 6 people were injured. Trinidad has also reported several cases of the Zika virus, so the Zika virus is expanding in the Caribbean. And the Pakistani cabinet, Pakistan activist Malala is expected to visit flying there at this current week after her trip to Nigeria. In Bolivia, they have lowered the working age 10 years of age. If they 10-year-olds will be allowed to work in a work permit if they attend school and if they get supervision from their parents. The Bahamas economy is fragile for the value-added tax. However, the IMF is still putting pressure on the government to impose a value-added tax. The highest hotel chain just opened second resort in Cancun. That will be open in 2015. In Guyana, there's a controversy in government. The opposition party is announcing that they're going to call a no confidence motion on the current prime minister. In Barbados, the business community, as well as many politicians, have called for an additional tax break to help spur the economy. In Turks and Caicos, we have seen already a significant boost in arrivals in terms of tourist season this year, just since January. As I said, the Caribbean community had a summit a weekend or so ago, and is currently expected to have a summit again with Japan at the Caribbean Summit. These leaders are being put forward with several items in their agenda. One of the items that have not mentioned at that time, but which they agreed to pursue, was the whole issue of reparations. They do have a committee formed at the interstate level. They have talks with several European nations of powers in Europe with European courts, perhaps with the world courts. So they agreed to continue and move forward and seek reparations for the damages from colonialization as well as from slavery. The Antigua Prime Minister and the President of Chile held talks. This is on the site of the meeting in Brazil of BRICS. The Panamanian president will meet with former Mexican President Enrique Fox. There was an earthquake, which is expected in the island of Martinique, which is 4.3. Haiti and the island Turks and Caicos, met and signed an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, that will address the issue of migrants and other related issues. In Honduras, the government announced that it is opening an ethanol production plant. It is hoped that that will provide resources and revenue both for farmers as well as for workers, and in doing so, they help alleviate some of the conditions, unemployment, poverty, etc., that is part of the refugee crisis that is driving people to travel so far to try to enter the United States unlawfully. China, as I said last week, was visiting in Brazil. It was in South America to attend the BRICS Summit. But as it turns out, China had a whole lot of other business that it was doing. Just as Russian President Putin was meeting with many Latin American leaders, we now know that the reports are out. China's President Xi Jinping was meeting with a lot of leaders as well. China, while having a separate bilateral meeting with Brazil, signed many agreements, energy, agriculture, infrastructure, railways, etc. with Brazil. China announced that it is that it expects to see a $500 billion trade with Latin America in the next 2 years. That's annually. China already has over $100 billion a year in trade with Africa, but at the completion of the next decade, they expect to see $500 billion worth of trade annually with Latin America. And that, of course, is CELAC, the unity of Caribbean and Latin American countries, which we have also reported on. CELAC is the meeting that occurred in in Santiago, Chile, some January ago. CELAC is the counterweight or the opposition to the Organization of American States, which is based out of Washington. CELAC supports a integration agenda for South America, in which there will be one passport so that a person who lives in South America will belong to the South American Union. China has announced that it is going to establish a $20 billion infrastructure fund for Latin America. That will be between China and CELAC. This announcement, which was announced in Brasilia, Brazil, as the Chinese president was standing next to President Rousseff, president of Brazil, this announcement constituted the first China-CELAC forum, or the China-CELAC summit. In addition, China met with dozens, 12 or more other heads of state while they were there. And so China met with the president of Argentina, Raul Castro of Cuba, president of Nicaragua, president of Ecuador, and others. China announced that they will offer over 6,000 scholarships within the next 5 years to students from Latin America to come to China and to study. President Li of China said that CELAC, its quartet, CELAC has 4 countries that are elected every year to be one of the leaders and spokespersons and the organizers for the community of Caribbean and Latin American countries. The China's president said that the quartet serve as excellent partners for China. Who makes up the quartet? The quartet is made up of Costa Rican President Luis Guillermo Solís, Cuban President Raul Castro, Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa, and the Prime Minister, the Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister, who was just elected, George Brack. So China has initiated a Chinese CELAC forum. They've initiated a group of scholarships. They've initiated a $20 billion infrastructure fund, and they expect to expand their cooperation, to expand their presence in the Americas. They expect to expand their trade with the Americas, and in 10 years, they expect to have $500 billion worth of import-export business done with the Americas. In addition to that, given the agreement on railways, the Intercontinental Railway, when we think about the Intercontinental Railway, we think of the Intercontinental Railway running from East Canada all the way across the North-West Territory, all the way across Canada to British Columbia. From Nova Scotia to British Columbia. And of course, as Americans, we're familiar with the Intercontinental Railway, the United America goes from the East Coast all the way to San Francisco to West Coast. And by the way, many hundreds of miles of that Intercontinental Railway in America built in the 19th century was built with Chinese labor. Chinese immigrants came here and became part of that. So China is now set to become the sponsor and with its firms, companies, and engineers, perhaps even the implementer of the Intercontinental Railway to South America that's going to link all of South America. So there was a whole lot of business being done last week at all of those meetings, and over last weekend when you had the BRICS summit. As I said, the president of China met with enormous numbers of leaders. He had a bilateral relationship meeting with many countries, so he not only met with a group, he also met with individuals. And of course, his host was the Brazilian president, and in their bilateral meeting, the president of China announced that the Asian Import-Export Bank, which is housed by China, will make a loan of $5 billion to Brazil. This loan is so that Brazil can pursue its infrastructure project, or finance project. This is strictly with Brazil. This is not part of the $20 billion for Latin America. This is $5 billion for loans beyond that, as I said, they are in talks with all of the South American leaders to become the source for constructing the Intercontinental Railway. Human trafficking is in many cases now becoming just as profitable as drug trafficking was or is. In Colombia, they arrested 2 Africans, 4 Colombians, who, for all intents and purposes, were organizers and coyotes. And so that is part of what's fueling the refugee crisis on the borders here in America. In Mexico, an American who was missing, his body has been found in 2 bags of, I apologize for the indelicacy, his body was found in a shallow grave there. As I said, the Japanese Prime Minister is scheduled to visit Trinidad and Tobago to have a summit with the Caribbean Community of Nations. This is on the heels now. Remember, we talked a couple weeks back, Vietnam sent a delegation, its premier came and visited Haiti, several countries. Now you got Chinese president, Russian president, now you got the Japanese president, all of them paying business, bringing money, bringing expertise, and so forth to the Americans. In Ecuador, they are experiencing a trade surplus that is certainly enhancing their balance of payments and enlarging their presence in terms of being a power player in CELAC across South America. We turn our attention now to homeland, special homeland. The African Union sent a special envoy to Libya to report on and investigate the situation there. That visit has concluded. The African Union donated 20 vehicles to the Ministry of Interior for the country of Mali, where they can begin being our police their country. The African Union Commission and the World Tourism Organization signed a cooperation agreement to work together to expand tourism throughout Africa. Humanitarian Affairs Division of the Department of Political Affairs for the African Union Commission held a 2-day forum. This forum was titled Disaster Early Warning System and institutions dealt with those issues. Chairwoman joined a meeting of African ministers integration, which was already in progress occurring in Swaziland. They welcomed the land peace talks, the government in Mali, and the separatists, its specific name. Now that they've gotten a lot of rebels out, Mali, the insurgents, they now have very difficult negotiations with a group of separatists in Mali for the legal peace talks have now begun. The situation with the border shut-off of Detroit is a globally recognized situation. Talking about, of course, the United Nations, but in a great deal of articles coming out of the continent because of the integration of the world, because of identification with us with Africa and Africa with us, there were stories now that document concerned that Africans have for the residents of Detroit, 100,000 residents who perhaps could have their water shut off, humanitarian crisis that would ensue. The fact that they were having their water shut off because they have bills 60 days old in a city where the whole city itself is bankrupt. Unemployment is obscene. Crime is running rampant. And yet, signatory to the Declaration of Human Rights, the United States should abide by its obligations. Water is a human right. So that here is an article that concerns African perspective curiosity. In Egypt, over a dozen people killed in clashes between the government as well as the members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Somalia, the Al-Shabaab, Islamic militant attacked the police. As I said earlier, there was a bus attack in Kenya. 7 people billion-dollar loan, get additional funds to fight Boko Haram, to fight the insurgents. However, he is receiving a lot of pushback both from the National Assembly as well as the local politicians, prominent persons. One of the things that is being said is, well, what happens to the millions that are already in the budget for this purpose? Where did those monies go? Why have we not seen a more progressive, active, assertive response from the Nigerian military? How would the money serve any useful purpose? So there's a lot of rejection of the president's request for this additional money, as well as the fact that among many commentators, this money, if it is going to be a loan, should be spent on infrastructure, hospitals, schools, other projects to promote the good of the country, and that the Army has already been resourced to get on with the business of defense of the country. Scores were killed, have been killed in news violence, and unfortunately, in South Sudan, we're seeing a resurgence of tribal clashes occurring because the peace talks there appear to be stalled. The reintegration of government between the various clans and tribes appears to be stalled. So now you have frustration added into the mix. So you have outbreaks of clashes, which leads to reprisals. You kill my people, now I got to retaliate. So that is beginning to spiral out of control or get initiated again. HIV deaths throughout Africa are on the decline. And there's an article previous to the Malaysian airline tragedy that said that with new investigation, drugs, and treatment, one could now see the pathway forward. Maybe there would be the elimination of HIV altogether by 2030 or 2040. So therefore, this tragedy in Ukraine has an impact on Africa. Because again, these were some of the top people in the world traveling to an international conference who were killed in this plane crash. I've always talked about how the international community recognized and celebrated the birth of Nelson Mandela, how in South Africa it was a day of service. In addition, South African scientists working at their radio telescope identified a triple black hole or three black holes operating in a particular galaxy. It is believed that the continued research will help them understand how black holes help galaxies form in the first place. Same with South Africa. Trial of Oscar Pistorius killing his girlfriend continues. However, there was an incident at a bar or nightclub where Oscar Pistorius was involved in altercation. He is accused of having been intoxicated during altercation. In Nigeria, police have captured another person involved with Boko Haram, supposedly another leader of Boko Haram. The Belgians have announced that they're going to make a request to the European Union that the sanctions against Zimbabwe should be lifted and released. There's a lot I can say about that, about Belgium's involvement in Congo and Africa. The Houthi has announced that they're going to add additional soldiers and troops to their already commitment to Somalia to help stabilize that government. International Monetary Fund has approved a deal for support for Tanzania in its efforts to refinance its loans and debt. The Democratic Republic of Congo, they are launching an agribusiness park. This is believed will help not only farmers, but again, help to reduce conflict by giving people a regular means of employment and so forth. In Nigeria, while she was there, the Pakistani activist Layla again met with President Goodluck Jonathan to encourage him to meet with the girls' parents, girls that have been kidnapped. The president of Nigeria has not met with the parents is the United States Special Envoy to the conflict in the Republic of Congo and in the Great Lakes region. He just returned from a visit there and is very positive that the tide has turned, that there's been paradigm shift, that the possibility for peace and progress is never been better. What Russ Feingold is acknowledging that this was brought about by the commitment of the African countries and the international community. One, the international community, the United Nations, created the intervention force, which was not just a peacekeeping force, but had the authority to act and to pursue those who were committing acts of violence against peaceful civilians or shooting at the UN, and could pursue them across boundaries, to pursue them in other countries. The United Nations has never given itself and its forces under its command that authority before. The DRC was the first test case. We have seen that in that instance, just like when the United Nations gives authority to the U.S. and someone else, that is a means by which force can be applied, because you're not just sitting there waiting to respond when somebody attacks you. If they attack you, you may pursue them and arrest them or deal with them. In addition, the 13 countries of the Great Lakes region signed a cooperation agreement for peace and security. And this was also immediately helpful in bringing about a positive response, according to Russ Feingold. In addition to the 13 African countries that signed the agreement, you also had the United Nations, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and others, the European Union. And so bringing together this kind of international effort, along with having an interventionist force, is what Special Envoy Russ Feingold is saying has brought about the possibility of a peaceful resolution and progress in the DRC. In Liberia, of course, they are concerned. There was a 1 megawatt hydroelectric power project that was going to be jointly sponsored by the United States Agency for International Development and the United Nations Development Organization. For some reason, not known at this point and not reported in the article, the USAID has withdrawn its funding for the project, and so now the project is in doubt. However, the United Nations Development Organization is still continuing and has not said anything regarding its funding. In Sudan, there are 7 million people who have escaped. They are refugees who have escaped violence from Darfur, that region, as well as violence in South Sudan. And these 7 million people are in dire need of relief, aid, as well as other means of support. So the United Nations is calling on donor countries to help meet that need. Nigeria, we reported over the last several weeks that the deputy governor of the state of Adamawa has been indicted for fraud, embezzlement, and malfeasance in office. That trial has begun, so that trial is now concluded, and the governor of Adamawa, the state of Nigeria, has in fact been impeached and removed from office. There are many stories that talk about the upcoming U.S. summit. Of course, the United States Obama invited 47 countries to come to the U.S. to talk about boosting relations, trade, etc. And beyond that, you had 3 additional countries that have since been removed from the list of suspended nations, and therefore should be given an invitation, Egypt being very prominently among them. And so this meeting is going to take place August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So you have a number of commentators who are responding to this upcoming meeting. A couple of weeks ago, I read a letter from Bell Clinton, I believe, Constituency for Africa, bemoaning the fact that we were not better organized, more organized to take advantage, and that the corporate sector would be the voice that the African leaders heard, but that the African diaspora wouldn't necessarily be represented. Well, there was another letter. Chika Oyani is the publisher of the African Sun Times. In addition to that Dr. Moyani, who is Nigerian by birth, also attended the consultation for the African diaspora meeting that we attended in October. And he's also the sponsor of a global call that occurred in March that involved over 500 people on a conference line Saturday in March. This was a conference call of the diaspora to respond to the Agenda 2063 letter that had been put out by the chairwoman of the African Unity Commission. And so Chika has written a letter to the African president. And the letter is entitled, "Don't Disappoint Your Most Important Constituency During Your Summit with President Obama." Dear Excellency, I am writing you this letter as you prepare to honor the United States President Barack Obama's invitation to come to Washington, D.C. for what is billed as the U.S. African Leaders Summit. According to the announcement, is aimed at strengthening ties with both one of the world's most dynamic investment regions, as well as highlight America's commitment to African security, democratic development, and security. I can tell you that since the announcement of this historic summit between President Obama and his co-African president, the African diaspora has been engulfed in great anticipation at welcoming almost 50 African states and countries, which is the citadel of African diaspora dynamics. Know that this is a very important summit, that you are going to be very busy most of the time. But we are worried as to how you will spend your spare time. We are worried that you might disappoint your most important constituency, the African diaspora, which has been in the backbone of every notable African initiative at Africanism, education, and winning independence, freedom of apartheid and freedom. We are worried that through no fault of yours, after all, that's why you have that value, that you might ignore the very important constituency while making yourselves available to organizations selected by your officials in Washington, which have no basis in reality. I don't intend to imply that I speak for the whole African diaspora, but since we are all in the same boat of anticipation, there is a feeling that your officials have already made mistakes. It has to do with how your officials have allowed your precious time to be appropriated, monopolized by an organization that has decided to make a lot of profit out of your presence in Washington. I'm speaking specifically about the Corporate Council on Africa and the arrangements that have been made for some of you to appear for dinner, for lunch, for networking, all these for just a fee amount. Calculating the total amount for the 6-hour total event will cost the attendees $1,300. I know the officials who made these arrangements will be hoping to copy mad and being pushed information and well-advised information. Mind you, it is not that most African diaspora can't afford to forego up to $1,300 for an opportunity to meet with their president. But at the back of our minds is how we utilize that kind of money to do what we do best. Commit the money back to Africa to continue what is now being acknowledged as the fastest growing economy in the world. As is being taught us by financial institutions, the World Bank, IMF, the United Nations, 6 of the fastest growing economies are in Africa. I can categorically say with impunity of pride that without the estimated $70 to $80 billion in remittances that African diasporans make to Africa annually, the raging African economic miracle would hardly be taking off as it has done. Okay, according to the World Bank and the United Nations, the figure for the years 2011 to 2012 was only $60 billion. That is nothing to see. Mind you, this money does not include the money that Africans bring home when they travel back to Africa, which is much more than sending money to the transfer company. In other words, it is more probable that the diaspora invests in Africa more than $150 billion a year. The most beautiful aspect of the African diaspora giving is that it is made with passion. It is made without being beholden to one group or another, neo-colonialist or imperialistic country looking to corner Africa's natural resources or trying to grab Africa's land. The money goes a long way in absolving the government of a lot of responsibility that would accrue if this money wasn't being sent back home. As a contributor, John Wanda wrote in the African Sun Times, quote, "The irony is the sounding, Ugandans in the diaspora send to Uganda more than $800 million a year. They have done this for the last 20 years. Their contributions are the largest source of foreign exchange for Uganda. Not tourism, not crop exports, not fish, not even development aid raises this much money for Uganda. What we send to Uganda helps keep inflation down, helps pay for Uganda's huge import bill, brings cars, clothing, and other luxuries to Uganda. We help pay for soldiers to teach us something. We help build new buildings in Kampala and Mbale and Mbarara. We help keep Uganda's taxes down when we send money. That's what even those with our relatives abroad benefit from our largesse. Diaspora remittances are the single best source for Uganda. They come without conditions or conditionality, without a need to pay for local inputs or middlemen. Our remittances for school fees, for medical bills, for construction costs, give Ugandans a better life. The money we send to Uganda is what has kept the country going. Whatever the naysayers may say, and we do all this without expecting anything in return. When the World Bank sends $200 million to Uganda, they impose onerous conditions, including a payback period. Certain ways of doing this is change in the country's priorities. When we send our $800 million, which is 4 times more, to Uganda, we ask for nothing, absolutely nothing in return. I couldn't have articulated better the benefits that our $150 million a year brings to the country. What is written above applies to the whole African country. We should remember how the International Monetary Fund ruined the economy of many African countries, which demands for all kinds of conditionalities for the paltry sums the institution was handling in some of the countries. Our quest is not about profiting from your presence while in Washington, D.C. In essence, the African diaspora should be extended the same kind of respect that our leaders extend to others. We couldn't possibly do anything approaching the staggering amount of investment that the African diaspora makes in Africa every year without depending on any government guaranteeing that investment for all kinds of issues. Without belaboring the point, I'm sure that you get the message. There is still time to replan the activities you will be involved in when you are not discussing with corrupt Obama, the president. Here's what I suggest people do. Don't among yourselves select 5 different states representing 5 regions, headed by the current chairperson of the African Union, Mauritanian President, His Excellency Mohamed Ould Abdel Aziz. Remember, in this case, the African Union Commission has nothing to do with the invitation to President Obama. Let's keep it at that level. President Abdel Aziz should authorize his ambassador in Washington, D.C. work with other 4 regional ambassadors and presidents that will select to work with him in arranging an African diaspora town hall meeting. The ambassador should select a venue capable of holding about 2,000 people. Composition of the participants should be divided equally, 50% between African Americans, African Caribbeans, and African Latinos. On the one hand, and African continental on the other. On the African continental side, it should be based on proportional population representation. This is going to be a very serious 3-hour discussion with your most important constituencies outside of Africa. You will agree that we merit this little amount of your time devoid of admission fees or food. We're concentrating on issues important to the diaspora. Ergo, legal recognition of the African diaspora as the 6th region of the continent and infused an appreciation and encouragement of what the African diaspora is doing in being the largest investor in Africa. With the knowledge that you have the most powerful constituency that has been trouncing any other investor to Africa, you should not come to Washington, D.C. with the proverbial cat in your hand. You should hold your head high, knowing that our powerful constituency that loves Africa is totally behind you. Our love is for our motherland, and it is without condition. Respectfully, Dr. Chika Onyeani. With that, Madam Chairperson, I wish to end the report. In the African World News Report for this day, July 19th, 2014. My name is T.C. Adams. I am Vice Chairman of the African Friends of the African Union. I turn the floor over if there are questions. If there are comments, I welcome them. And if there are other agenda items or news items that I overlooked, forgot, or didn't get, by all means share that for the benefit of the group. Thank you all for listening, And Madam Governor Princess, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Brother TC. Wow, that was really very succinct, and I love the way you ended it with the letter that I hope at this time has reached the hands of our leaders, and they are actually going to take what Dr. Chika has said to heart, actually implement that possibility. Because it would be a shame for them to come all the way to the United States and not give the diaspora audience. That would be a shame. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, before we do that, did anybody else come on the line about the TC was doing his report that did not have a chance to announce themselves? Please go ahead and do so now. All right, hearing no one. Does anyone have any questions about Brother? Any comments?
Yeah, Andrew Williams here, but I'll defer to Leslie Cabello.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Andrew. My answer might be kind of long. Okay, mine may be long as well, but I just wanted to also acknowledge that you may have covered last week, not certain, but on July 9th, Bolivia was the first country to recognize the law of Mother Earth, recognize the rights of all living beings, giving the natural world equal status to human beings. That is relevant to everything we're talking about. As you may or may not know, I'm also a social media ambassador by Global International Cooperative, and I was appointed that back in 2009 as one of the first 187 Facebook ambassadors. That organization is now grown to a couple of goodwill ambassadors around the world who kind of complete. But my point is that from our perspective, I think it's critically important for those that do diaspora to recognize first ourselves, our own rights and dignity as global citizens of the earth. And then from that standpoint, it makes it very much easier for us to engage those people from the continent of Africa, from other parts of the world. But I think it's important at TC that we do acknowledge the fact that the country of Bolivia has taken a formal step for us all that choose to do so to align ourselves with the organization of the way we look at our earth and use that as the context for what we're trying to get done here with the African Union, particularly from the standpoint of Bermuda America, that includes Bolivia. Thank you.
Andrew,
let me respond quickly and short to that. I simply want to put a background context as well as opinion and highlight what you just suggested. Yes, the substance of that is we are sovereign citizens, human beings, and are part of this earth. In fact, we are the elders of humanity. There are no human beings, no anatomically modern humans, no Homo sapiens who came from anywhere other than from Africa. So we are the elders of the human race. And furthermore, we have some words of wisdom to give to all other segments of the human racial family. That said, Bolivia, it's important to understand why this would come from Bolivia. While you have, I forget, 30 or 50, I forget what the number is, tribal nations, indigenous people of the United States of America, and you have tribal nations, indigenous people all over the world. Bolivia is, in my mind, the only major country in the world and in the United Nations in which the first persons, indigenous people, actually head up the government. Evo Morales, president of Bolivia, is an Indian. And in terms of Native American or indigenous person. And so I don't know of any other government, certainly not the Aborigines, certainly not the people of India. I don't know of anywhere else in the world where the indigenous people actually are the head and the leadership of a major country in the world. And so that is another reason why you would have this coming out of Bolivia, is because the indigenous people of Bolivia run the country. And we should not remember, we should not lose sight of it. But I applaud and thank you for bringing that to our attention.
If I could just respond to that also, I think it's important that when we talk about humanity, that that it's important to understand that humanity is made up of the constituent cultures that that make up humanity, and I think that sometimes we get caught up. I think a lot of times we get caught up in the designation of race as opposed to culture, and race really, in many circles, is considered a false designation because there's so many mixtures of people that it's hard to determine, racial designation. But what becomes most important in world relations is the designation of culture, and that's what is important, and what needs, I think, in my estimation, needs to be that identity, the cultural identity, is the one that needs to be emphasized and maintained, because when we lose culture, we lose a significant part of humanity. When we think of the many indigenous cultures in South America, for example, that have been lost as a result of colonization and domination by Europe, humanity loses. When we think of colonialism in Africa, even though we still have many of the cultures there, still they have been diminished to a great extent by the whole colonial and slave destination. So I think it's important that that we emphasize the cultures that that make up humanity, and because a lot of times we are the most humanitarian people on the planet, and a lot of times we get caught up in pushing humanity and not enough of cultural unity and building the unity within our community, because we contribute to the world, and this is what I think DC was implying, and I don't want to speak for you, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what is important is the contribution that each culture brings to the human experience. And if I could, I'd like to raise this question, and I'd like to first, really appreciate the quality of news analysis and reporting that you do, DC. And I think one of the most important things that you mentioned to me today, among the many important things that you mentioned, is the whole question of what the BRIC countries are doing. And if you could, I'm not sure if I got all of the BRIC countries that were involved, but I think what is going on within BRIC is very significant for the future, and also it relates, I think, in terms of what the FAU is doing in terms of the whole question of economic empowerment. I think the whole question of the new currency that they are accepting, from what I understand, and I heard some reference to this on the Political Theory show this morning. I understand that the BRIC countries have already developed a bank that intends to promote a new currency on the world market, and that has implications because it will compete with the dollar, and we have to deal with the fact of a diminishing of if we deal with the diminishing of the dollar, then we also have to deal with the fact that the power that the U.S. has in the world becomes diminished also, because what we see is the rise of many of the third world and down countries that Malcolm referred to when we talk about India, China, South Africa, and some of the other countries that you mentioned, Brazil. they begin to rise, then we also see a diminishing of world domination by the U.S. That has implications economically, it has implications politically, and otherwise. So I would just ask if you would address that, and also the reference you made to the CELAC countries. This is my first time hearing of CELAC. I would ask again if you could repeat those countries. I have Costa Rica, Ecuador, Cuba. I think you mentioned another country, but if you could just expand briefly a little bit about CELAC. This is my first time hearing about it. And also the reference you made to Belgium's interest in releasing Zimbabwe from the embargo. I would ask if you could expand on that for a couple of minutes also. I think that's very significant, particularly given the fact that Mugabe is going to become the head of the AU next year.
Hopefully I can remember in order what you have. One, going forward.
If I could, JC, I'm sorry, I meant to mention this. One of the reasons that I think the British question is important also is because, and this is not considered in the whole analysis in the regular news cycle when they talk about the economic sanctions that Obama is imposing on Russia, on Putin, is that Putin is being treated to by the BRICS countries come into their currency, and so the economic sanctions that Obama's trying to impose, it seems that they might not even be a concern for Putin, because if he gets into this other market with the BRICS countries, then he has an alternative to the denomination that the U.S. dollar has on the world market. I just wanted to mention that.
Well, BRICS is still Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It started off as BRICS without South Africa. And then, of course, I think when they had their first organizing meeting, they recognized that they had Asia, the Americas, they had all these different parts of the world represented, but there was nobody representing Africa. And unfortunately, if you think about the major powers of Africa, Egypt should be a major power. Egypt, by the way, is the most populous Arab state in Africa. It has the biggest army next to Algeria. And yet, because of internal turmoil, Egypt has, it's had this problems. Nigeria, which is technically the biggest economy right now, it just took over from South Africa. But again, because of its internal issues, Boko Haram, etc., it has those issues prevent it from being such a stabilized state and able to move forward and insert itself both on the global stage as well as in the continent. Same thing with Kenya. We have a united government now with the two largest tribes, something they're trying to do in South Sudan. But remember, 4 years ago or 8 years ago in Kenya, you had a lot of people get killed because two tribes went to war over the presidential election. Vice president and the president now represent those tribes. And so you had countries that North, South, East, West should be playing a stronger role. But the countries which have the stability to play that role, for example, I saw an article talking about how with the AIDS crisis, with the Ebola crisis, with the Boko Haram crisis, it was the president of Ghana who called meetings and had other presidents come to a site to sit down and discuss how we can organize and come together. Ghana is not, maybe it's not one of the biggest countries, not one of the biggest countries, but it has one of the most stable political regimes. Power has been passed over and over from hand to hand, successful, peaceful. And that stability gives you the means by which to insert yourself and assert yourself on the international stage.
Former.
former one, who is now the head of the African Commission. And so South Africa has stepped forward in that leadership role on a continental level. So it was a natural extension to add South Africa so that Africa would be represented into the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And now you have Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and South Africa. A lot of people from the Anglo world, Western world, whatever you want to call it, have amnesia in terms of history. India was once colonized. Indians have forgotten. The Brazilians were not just colonized. The vast majority of slaves, most of them coming from Angola and other places, went to Brazil, not to the Caribbean and not to North America. Brazil remembers that. In Russia, they had issues with the other European powers for centuries. China, Britain, and the UK tried to turn them into a country of prostitutes and went in and took the opium, took the tea, and then turned around, I'm going to sell you back your stuff with a hefty profit margin for me. I'm going to turn all your people into prostitutes and drug addicts. They call them opium wars. Look them up. China hasn't forgotten that. And so all of these countries have been victims in the 19th century and the 20th century of the quote-unquote Western power. What you had coming out of World War I was the disintegration of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the beginning of the disintegration of the United Kingdom, the British Empire, the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire, and some others. And so four empires disintegrated. And then you had World War II. Out of World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union emerged. And for the Western world, you had the financial banks, people, wealthy folks, put together a regime at a place called Bretton Woods. That financial regime was the financial regime for the world up until the Arab oil embargo. At which point it became clear that there were some other players in the world, basically around natural resources, who could come together collectively and leverage their natural resource power. And so in exchange for two things, one, dealing with democracy and youth organizations and minority folks in the community in America, it was black folks, asserting their citizenship rights. You had a trilateral commission formed to try to intellectually grapple with how do we have to deal in this new world? How do we suppress all of these democratic impulses that we see occurring in the world? And so out of that, you had both the oil embargo as well as you had suppression of the Black Power movement and what have you in the U.S., suppression of the student movement in France and what have you, all around 1970 to 1973, 74. Now, on the flip side, you also had the Soviet Union invading Hungary and doing some other things in terms of that side of the Cold War. But individual countries and peoples were asserting their own citizenship rights and their own rights to demand certain things from their government. And so you have this response. And part of that response from an economic perspective was to move what is called the trilateral commission. It is no longer the United States versus the Soviet Union. It's the United States and the United Kingdom. And when I say the United Kingdom, I mean the Commonwealth. Everybody was on the wing. And Japan. Japan emerged out of World War II as the dominant power. At this point, Berlin Wall was still in place. So it's just the U.S. Commonwealth headed by the United Kingdom and Japan. That's the Trilateral Commission, late 60s, early 70s. So now, they, under the auspices of Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon takes the U.S. off the gold standard. Our money is no longer backed by gold, it goes out to silk. What allows it to have currency is that everybody in the world why it's called Petro. So that gets done by Nixon and Henry Kissinger. By the way, Henry Kissinger did a political thing where he took the State Department of the U.S. and he took the Middle East out of the African section. Prior to Henry Kissinger, all that you call now the Middle East was in Africa. That was in the African section of the State Department. Henry Kissinger goes in and creates a whole new section within the U.S. State Department called the Middle East. And the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, the black folk, is what is Africa. All of that happens in the 70s. And we've been living with that regime now. Go through Reagan, go through whatever. Been living with that regime until for money. Up until now, there have been threats to that regime. Saddam Hussein threatened to take his oil off of the dollar and put it on somebody else, euro or whatever. All of a sudden, Saddam Hussein, he threatened to do this in 2000. We basically invaded him in 2003, I think. Later, after Saddam Hussein, Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi, made a statement that he was going to take Libyan oil off of the dollar and put it on something. Subsequent to that statement, see what happened to Gaddafi. Because what underpins the dollar is really the U.S. money currency being used as the reserve currency of the world. Why is it the reserve currency of the world? Well, we guarantee it was still saying we have the largest economy at $16 trillion. Yeah, all of that is true. But why is it that everybody uses it as a reserve currency? Well, because you can't buy and sell oil. So most people buy, if you're not going to use the gold, most people buy and sell oil around the world. Everybody in one way or another needs oil. They sell and buy oil in U.S. dollars. Not gold, not anything else. And that supports the institutions, World Bank, IMF, and so forth, so on. And these institutions, by the way, are part of this group. The other thing that happens in the middle of this is in the 80s, of course, you have the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the consolidation of Germany, east and west, which makes now more a European Union. The consolidation of Germany is what really creates the European Union. So now you have the U.S., UK, and the Commonwealth countries, Japan, and the European Union that constitute the financial West. What's the opposite of that? What's the opposition to that? Well, Brazil, Russia, India, and China came together to basically form an economic union, the largest, fastest growing economies in the world, not already a part of this, to create their own little group. It's an economic group. And it is a alternative to U.S., UK, EU, and Japan. And they've added South Africa, the rest of Africa. In addition, you've had a South-South dialogue between countries below the equatorial line, both in Southeast Asia, India, Africa, and South America, having dialogue all throughout the late 90s and the millennium. Now we're in the second decade. Remember, we're in the second decade of the new millennium. And they have formed a equalizer to the IMF to deal with their currency. They have formed now a bank to deal with equalize the World Bank. And there are discussions of having a basket of currency, taking their own currencies and balancing them together to come up with a composite currency or something that will be based upon their collective strength. None of them are a superpower globally in all areas by respect, including Russia. They are basically regional with global reach. But collectively, they do constitute this power, particularly when you consider now that China has surpassed Japan as the second largest economy in the world, recognized the U.S. And that China is now running a trade surplus, which means it is trillions of dollars in the bank. And the Chinese are using that money in Europe, throughout Asia, the Americas, Africa, and the Chinese are in the United States. They're buying land, property, and making investments. And so the world is changing, and those who were under the grip of colonialism and powers to be financially now have an alternative game to play. I mean, it's no different than having more than one bank. So if you only got one bank in a small town, you at his or her mercy. Let another bank move in or a credit union, you'll still change that too. Because now I got an alternative. I don't have to do business. I can go across the street. And globally, that is the kind of situation that is happening. Did I answer a little bit of that? And I forget what else. Remind me of the example. Yeah.
But before you leave that subject, Wesley. Okay, yeah, let's remember that. But I want, while we're still on this issue of BRICS, understand this: South Africa was an afterthought. South Africa does not represent Africa and the African Union, and this was a discussion within the past 2 years of why BRIC, Brazil with $2 trillion, Russia with $2 trillion, India with $2 trillion, China with $9 trillion in income, who collectively have nearly $14 trillion in income, challenging the United States, $16 trillion. Why did they ask $350 billion GDP South Africa? So Africa, the African Union, and especially Africa's biggest economy, Nigeria, with $500 billion, have been in discussions with South Africa about their participation in BRICS and the movement and challenge to the United States in terms of what is good for Africa and its 50-year plan. Thank you.
Yeah, I think thanks, Herschel. And by the way, that was the voice of Herschel Daniels, our chairman of the African Union. I think I covered a little bit of that. Nigeria, in terms of annual revenue, was only recognized this past year as the absolute largest economy in Africa. So at the time that South Africa had the invite, while there's the notion of South African upping it, South Africa, in fact, was the annual basis the largest economy. That switchover occurred recently, like this year. What I said earlier. Nigeria should get all that in a bottle of rice. But Nigeria herself has internal issues, politically, going from one president to another president. So Nigeria is supposed to have 3 presidents: a Christian president, a Muslim president, and a nativist president. One who represents sort of the Yoruba and native religions.
Excuse me. Wait a minute. What constitution are you talking about that she's supposed to have 3 presidents?
Nigeria?
And not in the current Nigerian constitution. No.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's part of the constitution. It's part of the deal and the arrangement for the stability of the country coming out of the Civil War.
No. You're talking. it is not part of the deal for the country.
Never forget that in the United States, Declaration of Independence precedes the Constitution. So in Nigeria, the arrangement that is understood, particularly by the North, that there will be a rotating president, and that their presidency got cut short because somebody died, and the vice president took on. And that is a dispute that is going into the next round of presidential elections. So whether or not it's in the Constitution or not, it's part of Nigerian politics. It is a real factual issue in Nigerian politics. And so that is decisive, that issue, that instability is different, and it has an impact. I would argue that that contributes to the opening for why you have the insurgent rebels, those who want to look around, able to do what they do, and why you don't have such a strong military governmental response. There are those questions that must benefit
Those the whole question in Nigeria currently is he going to run in 2015? Okay, the whole issue of whether he's legitimate or not, that question, that boat has sailed years ago, except for those who are holding to, okay, but in country.
The reason the vote has related to 2015 is because the real question is not is he going to run in 2015, but also whether or not he should run. That gets back to this alternative president, rotating president. That gets back to that. And so the question is not just will he run, he has announced that he intends to run. He's already said that. But there are those in the North who are saying, wait a minute, okay, we should have our presidency. We didn't get a chance to have our presidency in his full term. We should get our president. We should have our president.
He has not announced that he's going to run.
Go ahead and run. You should not run. Now, Goodluck Jonathan has said he's going to run. He has not announced formally that he's running.
Thank you.
But he has expressed an intention to run. And so, all I'm saying, without getting into the details and the minutiae of whether or not Nigerian presidential election is going to be this way or that, all I'm saying is these issues and questions in and of themselves dealing with the president, added to the insurgency of Boko Haram, which is trying to break off the people's state, the whole territory. Add to that the incapability to the competence of the government to respond adequately to Boko Haram. All of those things add to the presence and to the perception that while Nigeria is the largest economy in the continent, that level of instability internally is preventing it from even stepping forward and exercising its influence the way it should within the continent, within the African Union Commission. So yes, you're right. There's been this discussion of why South Africa representing all of Africa, not only Nigeria, but there's been a whole country. Presidents would have questioned whether, even at the meeting going back in March, that you and I reported on, where South Africa hosted the BRICS summit, the other 10 states demanded that be opened up so that 15 leaders met with the BRICS countries. So there was a larger grouping. The president of South Africa didn't meet the BRICS by himself. Just as in recently in South America, you had 15 leaders meet with BRICS. A bunch of countries, his And as we get into the minutiae of these things, that could become part of an ongoing reference as we follow the development of this and report to our group from week to week. Because it's not things that we can settle here, but we can purview the facts and report those as we find them out. I took the time that it takes, and I know Governor Christmas is going to come down on this, but it's seldom that the Cincinnati area comes up with anything that is world significant. And I ran across in the Cincinnati Enquirer a report that we have in our community the new head of the Muslim, the largest Muslim group in our area. It's called the Council on American Islamic Relations. And it's a young lady, not a man, but a young lady that heads this organization. And she's a product of Northern Kentucky, which is Mitch McConnell's stomping grounds. And as you know, he has been a very outspoken opponent of anything that would be Muslim and also of our president. But in this article, it states that a self-described Northern Kentucky girl has moved into the national spotlight. Her name is Rolla, R-O-U-L-A, Allouch, A-L-L-O-U-C-H. She's an attorney from Erlanger. Her last month was named to the head of the Council on American Islamic Relations. Chair, C-H-I-R. Yeah, C-H-I-R, said Robert. And it's a Washington-based organization. It's America's largest Muslim community and advocacy organization. Ms. Pollock is 44 years of age. She grew up in Maria, Kentucky, and Lexington. She went to the University of Kentucky Law School, which is Southern P. Chase College of Law, same one that I graduated from. And she moved to Greater Cincinnati 8 years ago. She works in Cincinnati, helping those the Islamic Association of Cincinnati in Clifton, and the Islamic Center of Greater Cincinnati, the largest mosque in the area in Westchester Township for worship. The Enquirer sat down with her and give us a number of things, but what she is saying and what she's doing is putting a face on the majority of Muslims in the United States, and it's very well done article.
Bill? Okay, the Council of American Islamic Relations, I sit on with their director, Karen Dahoud, on the MLK. And do they cover anything about their run-in with the Department of Homeland Security, their founders, who is supporting the Council for Democracy and Tolerance, their report on the head of the CARE, Kamil Nawash, okay, who was the head of Free Muslims from Terrorism, found that he was part of a group that was, that
joining with this Muslim group to put a positive face on the Muslims, and they asked her these important questions. At age 34, and extremely well educated, she handled herself pretty well. I'm just directing you that this is in our backyard, and she is the national head, and she is based in Washington, and she may be someone that you would be able to get a better response from her than the people that we're dealing with right now.
No, Bill. I'm highly familiar with them for over the past decade, and their support of the Islamic terrorism in the past, when they're willing to come and deny the programs for jihad, okay, then I'll deal with it.
I'm just saying, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying they're trying to put a different face on this, and they're showing and they're stating these. I'm not trying to argue it with you. I'm just telling you that.
It's not an argument. I mean, they are people who are trying to call themselves, we are similar to a Muslim NAACP. That's their official program, and they've been successful at it. But again, when we have the discussion of Islam in the Middle East and Africa, and especially in the issue of Nigeria, CARE's position in the past has been that they've been supportive of a moderate friends of terrorist movements, proven.
Let me just be the truth. I don't want to lose the time opportunity that we have right now. The second article is on one page, and you know the Mallory legacy in the city of Cincinnati, the most powerful congressperson that we have in state Congress, that is, was Martin Wicked Mallory, Sr., who died here within the last year or so. And his son, two of his sons, are judges, and one was just retired mayor for two or three terms. Now, on the front page, it goes into an article talking about the deputy stopped me because I was black. This is William Mallory Jr. Said he was halted at the courthouse checkpoint. This is a judge of several terms that was halted by a Hamilton County sheriff and brought to task as to his identity before letting him go fast. This man actually went to his chambers, got his deputy, brought him down, and held a conference in the courthouse as to who he was and what this deputy should have known prior to his saying. So racism is alive and well in the city of Cincinnati.
Bill, okay, that's the simple read. The other part is that he entered the courthouse. The deputy didn't know who he was. Okay, he wasn't carrying any identification. You know, in the courthouse, that if you're a judge or a lawyer, you walk in and the long lines aren't you because you walk in because the guards know who you are, or you're carrying identification that makes you a member of the bar or an officer of the court or a judge. He didn't carry any identification. Okay, so.
I'm telling you, Marshall, that I've been there, I've been in that position. I have walked through, they said, good morning, Mr. Calorie, and I went on to my appointed duties. And I know a lot of people that go through there. I've been down there to be a juror, and standing in that long line with all of my identification, drove the people walk through. There's one or two deputies, none of them, not one was stopped. This man was stopped. That's why he was so high-risk.
Yeah, and he didn't carry an ID.
Well,
He didn't carry any ID.
I mean, sometimes I drive my car and don't have my driver's license. But the need for them to check and find that out.
Thank you, gentlemen. And all of those items are stuff that we continue to report and comment on and keep our eyes, watch our eyes for. I want to return to the other question that Wesley asked me, which is CLAC. I wanted me to explain CLAC. CLAC stands for the Community of Caribbean and Latin American Countries. And let me sort of say that in 2010, Latin American leaders met in Rio, formed the Rio Summit Group, and that
Following that meeting, they decided to form a South American group. Evo Morales, the indigenous president of Bolivia, was one of those persons. He has natural gas resources at his disposal. Hugo Chavez, who was president, he's deceased, of Venezuela, who has oil at his disposal. These presidents helped to buy off and pay, not buy off, that's the wrong term, helped to pay off the debt that South American countries owed to the IMF. And so they used some of their resources to go in and pay off that, the debt to Argentina and everybody else. Now, Argentina is in new trouble, but Brazil and a lot of these other countries, they owe those leaders because they actually went in and helped pay off those debts to free them from the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF. Well, following that, they had a meeting in 2011, and they transitioned from the Rio Group to create this Caribbean, this community of Central American, Caribbean, and Latin American countries, Caribbean and Latin American countries. And CELAC has a more integration agenda. In some spheres, there's a social agenda. Because it's not part of, it's in opposition to the institutions created in Washington, IMF, World Bank, and that are housed in Washington. CELAC supports creating a bank of the South. It's like BRICS is creating a development bank. CELAC, back during the days of Hugo Chavez, supported creating a bank of the South. That was his initiative. The South America should have its own bank, its own development bank, just for South America. Not anything funded out of Washington, but there's enough natural resources, natural gas, oil, and everything else in South America, for South America to have its own. This is all part of that agenda. Now, in 2012, when the African Union was sponsoring the Global African Diaspora Summit, CELAC was meeting, and when you came back around inside of the 50-year celebration of the formation of the Organization of African Union and African Unity, the African Union held its January meeting and announced that its initiative, its stated goal, its theme for the year of 2013, which was the 50th year of the 50th celebration, that theme would be Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. Well, at the same time in January, we were swearing in on January 21st, 2013, Barack Obama to his second inauguration. The African Union was opening its summit in Addis Ababa under the theme of Pan-Africanism and the African Renaissance. At that same time, that same week, the community of Caribbean and Latin American countries, which encompasses 33 countries, all the way from Mexico, all the way to Argentina, and all the Caribbean countries, those who want to be part of it. That meeting was held in Santiago, Chile. Coming out of that meeting, the declaration was, we're going to have one passport, one continental identity. The African Union has been in discussions for how to do this, working towards integration. In the final declaration of CELAC coming out of Chile in 2013, they went and said, we're going to do this. This is what we're going to do. This is where we're moving. And we're going to have a continental bank, and we're going to have a continental currency in the future. Something similar to the euro. All of that came out of 2013. The other thing is, CELAC is considered an alternative to Organization of American States, which again is housed in Washington and is one of the Washington institutions. 33 countries are members of CELAC. The countries in North and South America and Central America who are not members of CELAC are A, the U.S., B, Canada, because Canada Canada is part of the Commonwealth of the United Kingdom. And then all of the Caribbean islands and places which are territories of the Dutch, the French, the British, etc. So if you're not a sovereign country, independent republic, you're not a member of CELAC. So all of those countries which are still overseas territories or have some connections to those other countries, they're not members of CELAC. CELAC is 33 countries, and they are pushing an integrationist agenda for South America and a sovereign, independent agenda for South America as a region of the world, like on the auspices and like the European Union, like the African Union. The Organization of American States operates on a neoliberal agenda in which most countries are in debt to the World Bank or the IMF. And when they get in debt, you go through austerity. You have to get rid of your pensions for your public workers. You have to sell, privatize your natural assets, and so forth. So that is the battle. And a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I reported on the fact that Uruguay and Paraguay are also in part of this battle because one of them was a founder of the Bolivian initiative, Bolivar initiative, and has switched sides. And that was the result of a coup. And so there's a lot of battle going on for the leadership of South America and the direction of South America. The Organization of American States would have South America go a neoliberal agenda, and Peru and Colombia are in that camp. Where, and I think Chile maybe, where it's not well, Chile was, but you have now a liberal or a leftist president, Bachelet. But then you have the other camp, which is the CELAC. Of course, you had Morales out of Bolivia, you had Chavez out of Venezuela, you had Lula out of Brazil. So you have these other, they call them leftists. But you have agendas which are integrationist and independent-oriented for South America. That's one side. And then on the other side, you have the neoliberal agenda. And you have the Organization of American States. And then you have CELAC. Those are the two ways things are debated. And as I say, CELAC, they hold their meetings just like the African Union. And they're basically pursuing a South American Caribbean Union type of integration agenda. That's what they are pursuing. And the Organization of American States is not pursuing that kind of agenda. Did I answer your question, Brother Wesley?
You explained a lot of things, and I really appreciate that explanation. And what I just want to just what I got from it is that this seems like it's more of a regional, it's more of a formation based on regional interests. And I was trying to distinguish, how do we distinguish that from what we call the active diaspora based on the AU's definition? And the way I would distinguish it is that our designation for the diaspora is not so much racial, but it's more cultural and historical, based on the historical ties that people in the South American and Caribbean region, the relationship that they have to Africa, and also recognition of the fact that many of the African descended people within these countries, such as Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Colombia, are people of African descent whose interests are not necessarily represented by regional interests, but their interest, as we identify it, is represented by their cultural and historical relationship to Africa.
Let me throw another little key in this. It's totally. So when we, re-elected or we swore in Barack Obama January 21st, 2013. At the same time, the African Union was having their meeting in Addis Ababa. during that same week, the Caribbean, Central America, and South American independent nations were having their meeting in Santiago, Chile. With me? That was in January of 2013. In March of 2013, in Africa, they had the South-South Cooperation meeting. Because there's a perception in Africa and in South America that they've got the short end of the stick as the southern hemisphere of the planet, vis-a-vis the northern hemisphere states. North America is in the northern hemisphere, Europe is in the northern hemisphere, Russia is in the northern hemisphere, and so forth. So there is a summit, not just of the countries on the continent of Africa and the summit in the countries in that South America, etc., but then these two continents get together, Africa and CELAC, Africa and South America. And they have something called the South-South Cooperation Summit. In 2013, they had it in Africa. And in 2014, I think they had it in the Americas. So in our world, not only is the African Union, just like the European Union, pursuing its collective aspirations, and South America and the Caribbean and Central America are pursuing their aspirations. But these two blocks of countries are in dialogue between each other, separate from any other conversation that is being held anywhere else. And they hold a meeting every year. That's a part of how our world is being reorganized. Okay? It's called South-South Cooperation. And so when we start thinking about, and matter of fact, when they had the South-South Cooperation Summit in Africa, it was just like you just had bilateral meetings between China and Brazil and all these countries, and then Russia had separate bilateral meetings. I mean, they meet in a group and then they meet one-to-one. When that meeting happened in Africa, the Brazilian president, Rousseff, had a personal meeting with Nigeria. Just the two of them, just the two countries, and they signed agreements. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of organizing going on. I remember that there was a comment, which I tried to research and find, but the comment was from the big new Brzezinski, allegedly. And he was talking about how the U.S. had wasted time and money on the Iraq war under George Bush. And while at that time, while we were doing that, the world was going ahead and organizing itself without permission.
Right.
Because we're spending time and money in Iraq, everybody else, China, everybody else is having conversations about economics, trade, culture, exchange, etc. They're not into war. They're having all kinds of other conversations, and they are organizing themselves into blocks and into groups and having bilateral relationships. And they're not asking Japan, the United States, the United Kingdom, or the European Union for permission to go ahead and organize themselves. And what BRICS becomes is a financing alternative for all of this. Stuff takes money. And if you can't get a loan from this bank, and that's the only bank in town, you might be out of luck. But if there's a competitor, an alternative, there's a credit union or a cooperative bank or a financial institution, then if somebody turns you down or you don't like their terms and conditions, like I said, you can go across the street or go down the street or next door. Walk in the door and say, hey, how you doing? I own a business, I need a loan. That's what countries are doing. That's what blocks are doing. And what BRICS represents is the creation of an alternative global financing system that facilitates other countries pursuing their aspirations in the style and the manner that they want to pursue them without having to meet those initial terms that are being set by someone else.
that someone else is the United States. Let's be real with what BRICS is set up for. It was set up just like G77, which is 50 years old, as anti-United States. Okay, let's be clear.
The only exception I would say to that personal is being up.
Yeah.
Thereby, it's the United States trilateral position. The United States, Japan, and the Commonwealth countries. The 77 you talked about.
It's the group of 77 established 15 June 64 that has over 134 states today. I'm looking at their website, and I didn't know they had grown to 133, but it was established as an independence to the Bretton Woods, okay, and back in 64. So BRICS is not new as independent movements to avoid the Cold War, United States and Russia, if you want, okay, United States and Russia, China in the 60s. That was what all this came out of.
Yeah, my question would be, is BRICS more influenced by the Chinese model of seeking spheres of influence as opposed to Europe and America, which have for a long time sought domination and exploitation of countries? China's policy, especially in Africa, has always been to seek a sphere of influence through economic empowerment. And it seems to me that that is a clear distinction. And I wonder how much influence that China has within the BRICS in terms of how they approach, in terms of policy, how they engage in countries and their development process.
All right, so this bank, the New Development Bank, all right, remember what I said, of the $14 trillion, okay, that of BRICS, we'll call it 15 trillion, okay, everybody else is a trillionaire except South Africa, okay, and so South Africa is the baby of the group, but South Africa, like Africa, has the resources that the world needs. We all know how big Africa is. We all know, on this phone, I make an assumption. So the whole question is, for us of the diaspora, is BRICS good 50 years for us who are of the diaspora, and especially for the 50 million people who are here in America who are part of the African Union? Or is it best that can we change the policies of the United States in light of that we have the authority as Americans based on the Treaty of 1885 to petition our government to make changes? In none of those other countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, does any of the African diaspora in those countries have an opportunity to make that change in those countries like we do.
Okay.
And I'm sure everybody has looked at the clock. Like Brother Callery said, that Governing Princess will be coming in on the line soon enough to tell us about our timing. I think what we need to do at this point is, Elder TC, thank you so very much for your report.
I sparked a whole lot of conversation, didn't I?
Yes, you sure did. You set the fire, and I tell you what, it's a blazing. So, but that's good. That's good. We need spirited conversations. We need spirited information because it makes all of us more aware of what's going on around us, and it brings to light that the world is not sitting quiet, and that other people are saying, wait a minute. We and making connections with other organizations and corporations and so forth and so on. It's happening on a larger scale around us with the world. So we all understand that it's not just America on the playing field anymore, that everybody else is on the playing field. And so thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront and for bringing people to start really thinking about what all these corporations and all these connections, how they influence us or not, as the case may be. At this point, I think that what I'd like to do is give up our chairman the last couple of minutes to kind of bring us up to date as to where we are, and then we're going to go ahead and officially close out the call.
Thank you. This has been a spirited discussion, and it's a discussion that we need to be in the middle of with this historic meeting coming up with the president and 47 leaders from Africa on American soil. The challenge of this new $50 billion bank that is being subscribed to on an equal basis by these 5 countries, okay, to create a contingency reserve agreement is meant to challenge the Bretton Woods infrastructure, Basel II, and a whole lot of Greek words that I could speak to you that you are not every day. But I put it to you this. FAU says we must move our government forward here in America like other governments forward in support of development of a 50-year plan that Africa put forth. If you haven't read that plan, the 2063 plan, the agenda, please talk to FAU Governing Princess at gmail.com, and we'll get that plan and work to you. We have been making through May 14th the necessary comments on that plan, and we said we would have together our framework on 1 August 2014. We have been doing that. If you have read our plans, okay, before and you have some comments on them, please send the comments to the Governing Princess or to the FAU Chairman at fauchairman@gmail.com. We look forward to working with all of you within the context of the African Union's 50-year plan, and as we put the details on our plan, feel free to comment. And feel free tomorrow as we have a call at 6 o'clock to talk about peace and security. Remember, our motto on that is that we look to make peace as profitable as war. Thank you, Princess.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if most of you were aware, but our Red brothers and sisters had a event
Thank you.
in Washington today, earlier, and we have been communicating with them. They have opened up the doors and want to connect, and so there's a lot of work going on the back end of what we're doing to truly solidify that relationship. And our chairman has been working diligently about that and working on ending hours to bring that relationship to fruition. So I just wanted to add that piece. So please, everyone, come back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, same station, same time. I will send out again another email to everyone tonight just to put down the new polling code, just in case the people are still calling on the old polling code. And just make sure that everybody has the current information that we are moving forward with all our projects. Thank you again, everyone. Brother Valerie, are you still on? Okay, I think you may have left. Well, in that case, Brother TC, can you send us off with words of wisdom as we close out the call for the evening? Sure.
had a very spirited conversation. Again, the purpose of these calls, this report, is that we are global citizens. Therefore, we need to understand what is happening in our world. Now, we go and appeal to the creator of all creative universe. So, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful experience and moment, this opportunity to come together to exchange information, thoughts, words, comments, that we can collectively be greater as a whole than any of us are parts. We ask you to bless our homes, our families, our colleagues, bless our intentions. For it is our intention that we become united as a global diaspora, that the tribes around the world will consider global, that we too are a global tribe. In fact, we are the original global tribe. Out from us came all others. Tribe of sapien Africana. Ask that you let those who are on the call watch over us as we go to and fro. Keep us always mindful of your admonition. That we love mercy, do justice, walk humbly, cleaning amongst ourselves as well as in sight. With that, I ask that we all bid each other a fun evening. But, amen.
In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Thank you very much, everybody. And be safe until tomorrow.
And last word, if you will, I'm on Facebook. All right. That's interesting. All right, so not many people tuned in today, but we are ready, willing, and able to take you, and I'm going to take you out with, once again, Friends of the African Union. I'm going to give you okay. All right. We are what we are. We are Friends of the African Union. We're going to share the screen here with Friends of the African Union. We are going to take that and we are going to play it. Welcome to Friends of the African Union.
Rally round the market day. Market day. Yellow gold, gold and red gold. Market day, the market day. Black for the people, beauty from. Just the way, got to the sea, got to the sea. Why I come up and yow, yow. You know, rally round the flag, rally round the red, gold, black and green. Rally round the red, gold, black and green. Market day, market day. So like the river. Market day, the market day. Market day. Yellow gold, gold and red gold. Market day, the market day. Black for the people, beauty from. Just the way, got to the sea, got to the sea. Why I come again?
Thank you for your time.